It's a wonderful Friday morning, and you are welcome once again to our Shifting Blame series. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. My name is Estella Hilda Anneman, and I'm the coordinator for American Corner Abuba, and I'll be your moderator for this session. So, American Spaces provides access to current and reliable information about the United States through book collections, internet access, events, and activities for everyone. So today we are discussing a very, very crucial topic, which is femicide, women's safety and self-care. And facilitating this session is Dr. Amanda Odoi. She is a research fellow at the Gender Research Advocacy and Documentation from the University of Cape Coast. So Dr. Amanda is a feminist, gender and social justice advocate, and an academician. She's also a research fellow at the Center for Gender Research Advocacy and Documentation, as mentioned earlier. And she also an affiliate lecturer with the School for Development Studies and the Department of Population and Health, all at the University of Cape Coast, Ghana, where she teaches gender and sexuality-related courses. So Dr. Amanda holds a PhD in Development Studies, which specializes in masculinities. And she's also having a master's degree in sociology with a major in women and gender studies. She also holds a bachelor's degree in economics and sociology from the University of Cape Coast. She's also an alumna of Flinders University, Australia Awards Fellowship Program, and the Ghana Alumni Ambassador Program. So during the session, please type all your comments or questions in the comment box below, and they'll be well addressed. Thank you so much for staying with us. Over to you, Dr. Amanda Odoi.
Thank you very much, Estella, and thank you, American Corner, for the opportunity to come again and share my thoughts on Shifting Blame series on issues of gender-based violence. So today, we are looking at femicide, women's safety, and self-care. The presentation will look at what femicide is, the forms, and what causes it. And then we narrow it down to femicide as it pertains in Ghana. What's the nature? What are the forms that we have? And what are the responses that we've had towards femicide cases in Ghana? And what do we need to do? Then I would wrap up by looking at what women can do as a form of self-care consideration in times of threats to femicide. So when we talk about femicide, we are looking at a form of gender-based violence and an extreme end of gender-based violence that looks at the intentional murder of women or girls or misogynist killing of women by men for gender-based reasons, especially being female, and assume that you are not meeting the gendered or normative expectation for being a woman. Femicide is characterized by various issues. First is the fact that it's universal. Wherever one finds themselves in this world, there is some form of femicide that takes place, that women are killed for different reasons. And the fact that it is also gendered. Femicide is gendered in the fact that it is mostly perpetrated by men against women. And it's also normative and this looks at how various norms and practices and some cultural expectations that we have as a society gives room for a femicide in honor killings. Femicide as a form of gender-based violence is also underreported. So wherever we find statistics around women's intentional killing of women, that these numbers do not reflect the actual situation in the various spaces. Femicide is also perpetrated by intimate persons. And this is because, as once again, evidence points to the fact that women are more likely to be murdered by people close to them in relation to the forms of partnerships that they have. In comparison to men, in most cases around murders of men, tend to be public space and people outside of their regular relationships that they form. Femicide is also different from female homicide. Female homicide basically looks at the killing of one by another, but the difference between femicide and female homicide is the fact that in femicide situations is intentional and it's based on a person's gender. In 2021, United Nations Women and UNODC report points to the fact that about 81,000 women and girls died through femicide only in 2021. And there's also evidence to suggest that this statistics has not changed much over the decades. So there's the likelihood that these numbers could be same and more in the 2022-2023 statistics is high. Femicide takes different forms, but then it's categorized into four main themes. The first being intimate femicide. As I mentioned earlier, when you look at femicide, it's mostly perpetrated by people that are close to these women and girls. And because of that, the numbers or the cases that are reported find that more people related to the victims are their partners or family members that they have close relationship to and have some form of alliance and allegiance to. Most women and most cases of femicide that are committed and experienced by current partners, ex-partners, and honor killings in the name of family, sustaining family image, has been the most dominant in all the cases of femicide and all the types of femicide that are identified in literature. According to the UNODC and UN Women's statistics, 45,000 out of the 81,000 women that were murdered through femicide in 2021 were murders that were perpetrated by people that are intimate and close to these women and girls. And this statistic suggests that in every hour, 5 women are killed by somebody that is close to them, a current partner, an ex-partner, a family member in the name of honor. The other forms of femicide are non-intimate femicide. These are the forms of femicide that are perpetrated mostly by strangers or people that do not have any form of close relations with the victims. There's also sexual femicide, which is related to forms of femicide that generate out of sexual violence and that results in murders. And then accidental femicide. Accidental femicide basically looks at femicides that occur where the victim might not necessarily be the ultimate target for that femicide. The person probably chanced on an existing or ongoing femicide situation, attempts to support, and then the person gets killed at the end. While these categories exist, these 4 categories exist, they can occur in tandem. They are not isolated in the sense that sexual femicide can occur through a stranger rape or an outsider coming in and killing you. Sexual femicide can also be perpetrated by an intimate partner or an ex-partner who feels entitled to you and still wants a comeback, and probably the female is refusing. So this form of femicide becomes some sort of revenge for the person. Femicides are caused by several reasons. One of the most key reasons is our gender. Socialization, stereotypes, and role expectations about gender, the normative expectations of what women are supposed to be, who they are supposed to be, where they are supposed to be, and where they can go to and cannot go to, are some of the reasons for which femicide occurs. Because we are told that women are supposed to be submissive, if they are not able to carry out or play out the submissive role in their relationships, it can result in femicide. In a reverse, because men are supposed to be entitled to certain aspects of women's bodies, when they are denied by their partners, it can also result in femicide. So unequal power relations becomes one of the drivers of femicide as well. Unequal power relations, which basically comes from our socialization, access to resources and opportunities in society. In our societies, most societies, ultimate power rests with men. Decision about household, leadership, sharing of resources and accessing resources ultimately are led and taken by men. And where these decision-making processes are disrupted by women, sometimes they end up being murdered. Normalization of violence against women and tolerating the fact that it is okay to hit a woman is also one of the drivers for femicide. Women end up getting murdered because a partner decided, in quotes, to correct them. So this cultural acceptance of violence and the impunity of perpetrators has become one of the major causes of femicide in most society. Acceptance of masculine capital is also one of the reasons for which femicide occurred. In most of our homes and in most of our cultural expectations, it is expected that men can use violence in times when they feel that their authority is being challenged. And in the process of using this violence as to reinstate their masculinity, they end up murdering some of the women. Harmful social norms, which looks at honor killings, killing women to safeguard the interest and the image of families, is also one of the major forms or drivers of femicide globally. History of gender-based violence. Because of the physical abuse nature, the sexual violence nature, and how they can result in death, if there is any evidence of gender-based violence, the likelihood that a femicide event can occur is also possible. And then the structural inequality around norms, responses to femicides that are already happening, selective response to an application of justice. In administration of justice, what do we do to people that are reported for having committed gender-based violence or for having ever committed any form of femicide? Because of lack of societal and political will to address these situations, people get enabled and continue. And with this enabled environment, it continues and leads to other forms of femicide. Femicide, so this brings me to looking at femicide in Ghana. The last time we looked at sex and talking about sex, I shared these pictures on how various women have been murdered by their partners for just refusing to have sex, denying sex, or even asking for protected sex. What this shows is that intentional murdering of women based on their gender is not a new phenomenon in Ghana. There are myths, apart from these images that have shown, and how it confirms the fact that femicide exists in Ghana. And growing up as members of the Ghanaian societies, we've also heard various myths and facts about how women murders, intentional women murders, have taken place or occurred in the country. Women and girls have been murdered for different reasons. Some by mere fact that they were going to work and were killed. Some assumed killings that were based on ritual demands, and also others that were sacrificed for the image of their communities. So there's a need to correct some anomaly in beliefs, traditional beliefs, and women, virgin females, are sacrificed for that. In 1999, about 25 women were reported murdered, and it was assumed to be serial murders. But these women were murdered whilst they were on their way to work or some in their relationships. This resulted in a number of women, feminists, going on a protest and demanding that police takes action because they had been silent over these serial murders for a long time. At a certain point, these women got audience from the president. This resulted in the establishment of the Ministry for Women and Children Affairs, now the Gender Social Protection Ministry. Over 2 decades after, we are still experiencing cases of femicide, and this time on a more rampant base. Between February 2020 and September 2023, There are over 60 reported intimate partner femicide and a number of stranger femicide in the media. I would want to share some of the statistics that we put together and are still compiling, and show how these are related to the other forms of femicide that were raised. In Greater Accra alone, between this time period, there have been seven women that have been murdered. And these young women that have been murdered are aged between 17 and 60. Lillian Dejo was murdered in East Legon in 2021 by the partner. There are others whose names have not been reported, but some of these murders have been through beating, and some of them undisclosed. And then there are those that were slashed with machete. So early this year, Lydia was killed. A newly wedded woman was killed in Accra with a machete. And then Eunice also murdered. In Volta region, we have 2 cases, and this was based on stabbings by current and ex-partners. In the Savannah region, it is unreported how the person died, but then is a girlfriend to the perpetrator. And these are all murders of intimate femicide. These are intimate femicide related. In Ashanti region, we've had 7. A number of them through shootings, some of them by even police officers. And then in Ebuno region, we've had 2 cases, one through shooting and one through rape and murder. And then in the Western region, we've had 3. We had 2, 1 in Western North, and then we have 5 in Central region. We have 13 cases in Eastern region alone. And then a number of them seem to be unreported as to how they died. But these are wives. These are sometimes pregnant women. These are girlfriends. And then these are women as old as 60. This 60-year-old woman, supposedly to have been killed by her visually impaired husband, who is in his 70s. This shows the death of femicide in Ghana, the rate at which this is increasing in the country, and especially in the last 3 years. This notwithstanding, we have had limited responses as to how to address or what to do when it comes to femicide. While there have been these reports flooding our media spaces in the last 3 years, there's still yet any institutional response concerning what we should do. We are yet as a country to have any government security services alert issued to women on how they can manage themselves, and also addressing the issues on how perpetrators of femicide should be dealt with. We are yet to hear the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection commenting on this in a press statement or even issuing alerts to women on what they can do. Just like the 1999 murders where women took to the streets to protest. Once again, it is only the Network for Women's Rights in Ghana that had issued an alert and also requested government to do something about the current cases of femicide that are happening in Ghana. The data and statistics I shared is also partly from the report that NetRight and then the collation of data that they put together to issue their press statement. The question I would want to ask is, and I think is worth asking, is what the responses will have been or would have been if these murders were against men, and especially perpetrated by women against men. Do we think that the whole country will be this quiet? Or do we think that we wouldn't have had anything done about it? This fits into the assumption that, or the evidence that femicide is based on our gender and also the normative expectation of who we are as women and what can be done to us. It is also because for a long time, women have not been acknowledged as equal citizens as men in our various spaces. And because of that, if it was men that were going through this, we would have had a response. But then there are dangers for our inactions as a country, not responding to these femicide alerts and what it means for us. One of the dangers is that we are creating and sustaining an enabling environment for femicide in the country. In just 3 years, we have had over 60 cases. And these 60 cases that are reported are just femicides that occurred in Ghana as a country. But we have Ghanaians who are outside the country in the US and the UK who have also within this period killed their partners, some attempting to kill themselves. And because of the interrelatedness between what goes on here and their linkage to what happens in Ghana, as a form of socialization, we are creating this space and environment to make men, and especially Ghanaian men, believe that they can kill the women when they go wrong, and whatever happens they will be scot-free. They'll go scot-free. The current culture and the silences around this has created, I believe, some permissiveness, and that is why between 2020 and 2023, we are having these increasing numbers of femicide. Some of the issues that come up when we raise these concerns around femicide is the fact that the police is handling it. I believe that it is not enough to say that the police is handling it, that there is a need for us to look at other measures that we can put in place temporarily whilst we find ways of addressing what is already happening. What other measures are we putting in place to deter other men from killing women or to build women's capacity to protect themselves in these instances? What other sensitization activities are we undertaking to let people understand that as a country, we do not condone the killing of women? And for the very reasons, out of jealousy, because a woman is able to stand up for herself, amongst others. The danger of our inaction is also the fact that we are losing an active and significant labor force and members of our society. These women that are being killed are mothers, are workers who are contributing to the revenue and regime of our country, who are workers that are going to sustain the future of Ghana and also going to produce the future labor force that a country will rely on. We pride ourselves in being Ghanaians. We pride ourselves in having citizens and being able to sustain the population of a country. But the killing of these women has consequences in our ability to be able to do this. We are also endangering the country in so many ways with the statistics, with the image that we are creating about the environment, the security and safety of women in the country. This has implication for investment, attraction, and for partnerships that we build with other countries. So it's therefore important that as a country, we look beyond the fact that these are just women dying to look at the bigger picture of the implication this has for us. It requires that we take actions that will help address these issues, national image issues, and especially protecting and safeguarding the security of our women. The recurrence of femicide and the silences around it so far in Ghana shows that we are not doing enough, especially when we have laws around what can be done when a person murders and when a person perpetrates gender-based violence. We need as a country to approach the current situation from a comprehensive and an intersectional perspective, rather than waiting for a few group of women or individual women to get up and talk about some of these issues. We have to understand that each time a woman or a girl is murdered, a sister dies, a worker is lost, a friend, a loved one, a provider, and a support system is lost. For most families, the only happiness they have known is that woman that has been killed. For some families, it is an only child. The investments of a lifetime has been lost, and it's important that we give credence to what needs to be done to protect them. We also have to understand that addressing femicide goes beyond being a singular individual act, leaving it to the media alone to be reporting, or the police to be arresting, or a woman's only advocacy. It must be a societal concern. And then we have to look at addressing this multidimensional interplay of issues that come up, from the social cultural structures and measures that we have in place to the situational factors and their outcome. There are some instances where people blame femicide on mental health, on economic challenges that men face. Then you ask again, don't we have women going through mental health crisis? And don't we have women going through economic challenges? But how many women have ended up killing their partners for these reasons? Most often when women end up killing, it is in self-defense, sometimes to escape from an attempted femicide. We need to re-socialize and alter mindsets about women and their worth and their appropriate place in society. What are we telling men about women and what's the utility of women? What are we as a society condoning when it comes to women? What emphasis do we place on women and their importance to our existence and survival? We need to enhance the policing and justice delivery system of a country, and then also enhance our advocacy and sensitization. Whilst we wait to be able to achieve this, I believe that it is also important that as women, we put in place our own personal measures that will safeguard us. And this I call women's self-care. I believe that it's time that women learn not to keep quiet over their abuses. You need to find somebody to talk to. You have a mother, you have a friend. You have to be conscious of who you talk to in the midst of all this. And that requires us that we learn to take action early and seek help. As soon as a partner, as soon as a family member, as soon as somebody around you start exhibiting the tendencies of gender-based violence, of seeking to harm you, you can report. You can talk to a close friend. One of the key things in gender-based violence is also the fact that women are economically dependent on their men. I know that even when women are economically liberated, there are instances where men in wanting to sustain their masculinities use violence. And so therefore there is no one clear-cut approach to dealing with this, but we should have our go-to money. And this go-to money must not or cannot always or should not always be physical cash. It is important that you have your physical cash, but you need your social capital, your social money, which is your networks, somebody you can turn to, somebody you can run to, even if it takes you to borrow to escape. Women must also learn to educate themselves on issues of gender-based violence, escape, know the service support systems that are in your neighborhood. Apart from DOFSU, what other places do we know that we can go to for help? If you escape from your home when you think you're in danger, where can you go to? What steps do you need to take? I think women must also stop the self-blame and victimization of other women. Most often when women are going through gender-based violence, the first thing even fellow women ask is, what did you do? Femicide does not occur because a woman did something wrong, but it's because the perpetrator thought that they could do that to them. There are instances where women have been killed for doing the right thing, especially in honor killings, because in the eyes of the perpetrators, that was wrong. Women also need to form safe spaces and build communities around gender-based violence sensitization. And I find that it is important that we have this space to talk about femicide, to get other women to think about things that they have never considered, and also to find out how we generate new discussions around protecting ourselves and having self-care for us as women. I believe that until the government does something about what is going on, we need as women, or we need as allies who can be males and females, initiate diverse hashtag campaigns in physical spaces as well as on virtual platforms to draw attention to the femicides that are happening in Ghana as a means of getting results. Some of these hashtags, I think, can look at this, that the need to break the silences around women killing in Ghana, that hashtag femicides in Ghana need to stop, hashtag gender-based violence, power inequality discrimination in Ghana must stop, and then hashtag say their names. We need to name these women that have been killed. We need to talk about their statistics, their background, where they are, what they did, who they were to the people that were intimate to them, and how the lives that have been taken has consequences for us as a country. I believe that in generating these discussions, just like the effect that the Women's March in 1999 was able to make, we will as a country be able to safeguard the security of women in Ghana currently, as well as build some self-care measures to protect our future. So this is what I have for us today. Thank you very much for the time and the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amanda. So many insightful things to learn from here. And some of the statistics are very alarming. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So, coming to the place of some questions that we can ask about this topic, how can women create a safety plan to specific circumstances? I've had a situation where maybe a woman will have a pepper spray in their bag, or you don't have to learn taekwondo, things to arm them or equip them, that in such situations, even if there is no bystander, they can have that self-protection they need. How can women go about in that safety plan?
So these safety plans that some of the issues that you mentioned mostly applicable when women are supposed to defend themselves in stranger femicides. But as I said, these femicides that are happening in Ghana are intimate femicide occurring in the homes with people that have vowed to love them and to protect them. Right. So there are so many measures that you can put together at home. And first is to be aware and conscious of your environment. In times of danger, where can you go to? Who can you go to? Who do you have on your speed dial? And then sharing your experiences. So because we do not share our history of abuses and the challenges we are facing, makes it difficult for people to step in when there's a problem. I have watched documentaries where some women told their sister that should anything happen to me, look at my husband. Or should anything happen to me, I have kept this envelope in this place. Go to that place and you will find who is responsible for it. Women must learn to build this community of support, who know or can trace. You can have trusted persons who can trace your background. It's important that we teach young girls some of these safety skills like taekwondo, so you can defend yourself. One thing that intrigues me is the supposed visually impaired man that was able to kill his wife. How did he see with a machete? How did he see and on all those? So apart from the psychological framing of women and their readiness to fight back, there's a need also to look at how many places in Ghana do we have pepper spray? How accessible is it? So as women, as we are building these communities around gender-based violence and sensitization, can we also come up with innovative ways of coming up with some of these protective measures locally made that we can share with women who cannot even afford to use them in times of need? Yes.
Thank you so much for that response. So talking about it being a universal issue, as you touched on in your presentation, how do we attend to, if you're looking at it holistically, how do we attend to this issue in an example of being in a family where you have a son or a brother how do you make sure that you don't create an environment that will end up making that child do that when they grow up? What are some of the initiatives we can put together to help the boy child, especially, so that we don't end up just empowering the woman to be defensive, but then the young boys out there clueless or not knowing what to do, or even in cases where the person may have tendencies of having such lash outs. Is there anything that can be created to help these young men out so that they don't end up being, perpetrators in the first place?
The very reason for which men or young men will grow up thinking that they can murder women intentionally is because of our gender socialization. And then our messaging around women and who women are in relation to men. So we need to address the stereotypes about women, women's worth and their importance. When you are socializing your son, what do you tell your female child as against your male child? So I think the last time I came, I mentioned that I keep sharing this experience. I was on a bus a long time ago, and then there was I think about an 8-year-old girl, and then the younger brother who was about 2. Then the younger brother slaps her. She hits back, and then the mother slaps her and asks her, "Don't you know he's a man?" That boy is going to grow up knowing that he's entitled to hit a woman, and as soon as he's able to hit, anything can happen. So we need to change our messaging, our narratives around women and their worth. For a long time, we have seen how important women are and in contributing to our society, the homes that we grow up in. And therefore, there's a need for us to have gender equal messaging and socialization spaces where men can equally see the worth of women, and women will also be able to have their rightful place in society. We need to let them understand that women are equal citizens and offer the same opportunities, abilities, and resources that men are able to do in society. And I'm sure that will be the starting point.
Right. So I mean, lately, some people cringe, especially guys cringe when they hear issues about feminism. In your personal experience, how do you handle, or how would you, attend to someone you are meeting who probably cringes when they hear the word feminism in the first place? How would you handle it so the person would understand, without feeling that it's maybe a woman being rebellious or anything of that sort? How do you handle such issues?
So the in the feminist spaces, we call that the fear of the F word. That a lot of people, even some women, that are afraid to be associated with feminism. And that is because of misconceptions around what feminists are and what they do. The basic principles of feminism is the fact that women and men must be given equal opportunity to engage in society. Feminism does not say that women and men are equal biologically, but that women and men can contribute equally to society if you're given the equal platform and access to the resources that are available. Feminists say that when you give women and men equal opportunity, you save men the stress of male breadwinner, so single-handedly taking care of a home with a partner that also works and earns an income and can contribute. It does not only save that woman, it saves you as well. So I make people understand that feminism is not to say that women want to take over men's space. It's just saying that we all have an equal role to play in society, so we need to. And then feminism, most people think is equal to misandry. Feminism is not hatred for men. It's just looking at balance and equal in spaces. So men should not feel threatened. Actually, there's one thing that my mentor told me, that a content woman is a better wife. If you're able to give your partner opportunities and you acknowledge her role and she earns her income, it saves you a whole lot of stress because she's able to take care of herself. So men must understand that feminism is not about hate for men. Feminism is about giving space. And then I also let men know that sometimes what you do is that you turn the question around. If it's your daughter, what would you want? Men become the best feminists when they have daughters because they wouldn't want anyone to harm their daughter and all that. So sometimes you turn the situation around and then you ask them, and then they reflect. When they reflect, you're able to come up to understand. But the basic thing is that feminism is not about hatred for men. It's just looking at equal opportunities for women and men. So men should understand and encourage their partners to also take out opportunities.
Well, thank you so much for clearing the air for those who may have had misconceptions about what feminism is all about. So, talking about relationships, how can women identify potential warning signs, situations that may harm their safety in their relationships?
These are things we call red flags.
Yeah.
Sometimes these red flags they don't need to be read. First, I believe the first thing is for women to be able to have their values intact and knowing what it is that they will tolerate and not tolerate. You should identify your deal breakers. Sometimes before the person even shows you that big red flag, based on what you know and what you will tolerate and understand and placing some value on yourself, you know that where this relationship is going, this is not the kind of things I want. But the first thing they should understand is a violent person, an abusive person, is controlling. No matter what you do, the person is so controlling, does not give you face. So some people believe that jealousy in a relationship is good and is healthy. But then you know when things are extreme. So women must learn to separate emotions from everyday messaging. Okay.
Right.
You're in love with someone, it's fine. Your partner wants to know where you are, it's okay. But if your partner goes to the extent of insisting, there are some women that go out and come back home and their partners must smell them. That is a red flag. Some of them must inspect their underwear to see if they want to sleep with another person. That is a huge red flag. You don't wait and marry this person thinking that when I marry him, he will be okay. He will never be okay. That is an insecure person that forever will keep chasing it. So pay attention to the person's actions. They are very important. Pay attention to your intuition. You know, no one knows you better than, so when there is danger, you know there's danger. Sometimes the person does not even need to speak and you know that there's danger. Have your values intact. Be observant. Study the person's history and actions. Listen to the person when they talk. In their past relationship, what ended it? How did it end? What's it? When the person is talking about your future, listen to the words that the person says. Me, when I marry you, you will not do this. When you go, if you do this, the way I'll do this to you, I'll beat you. The way, these are signs, these are dangers, and these are red flags. Some people don't talk, they act. What are the changes that are occurring in the person's life? How is the person? What friends did the person have? What are their beliefs? What are the conversations that they're having? These are all important things. So we need to be sensitive and alert to our environment and then the partners that we have. Somebody will say, when I met him, he wasn't like that. When he formed this friendship, he started behaving this way. As soon as that happens, that's what I said, speak up early. You let the person know, I have observed that you're doing this. I think women must also learn to start right from start, state their tolerables and deal breakers to their partners. If you're able to tell your partner, for me in this relationship, the day you will raise your hands or you ever lift a finger, I'm gone. Or I will not tolerate that. I think when women are in danger, one thing that we must also learn not to do is to speak when we know there's danger. When you know your partner is abusive, if you want to leave, don't say it. Plan ahead. Leave the time the person is not around so that you can be safe. Because men end up killing when they know that the person they have that control and hold over wants to escape. They get aggressive. So these are some of the things that we can pay attention to.
Wow. Thank you for sharing the tip with them. We are hoping that this would go across to a lot of women so that they will pick these tips and stay safe. So talking about the part of the victims, when people go through these issues? How can someone build an emotional resilience in terms of the trauma they've been through? What are some of the processes that, as from your expertise, women have to go through, from being afraid of men or being afraid of the next relationship or their own safety, even at home and so forth? What are some of the coping mechanisms a victim can have to address such issues?
Yes, I think one thing that we don't do much in Ghana is getting therapy.
Mm.
We mostly rely on prayers. I'm not saying prayer is bad, but then it's not enough to deal with some of this. Sometimes you need somebody to talk to. So we have to encourage as a nation counseling and clinical psychologists giving us access to spaces. And that means that we have to make it affordable. Can hospitals have some of these facilities that people can walk to? Or can DOFSU get some of these safe spaces where people can go to and talk to as a starting point? I hope that no woman tries to build emotional resilience in an abusive relationship, hoping that because the longer you stay, the worse it gets. It's either the two of you decide to get help. But when you leave that abusive relationship and you need help, personal self-care, first thing is you need to relax and let you understand that it is not your fault. You are not the reason why what happened. Most often women tend to think that it's their fault. They are responsible because a number of the relationships they go in tend to be abusive. But there's also evidence that when people make certain choices, their likelihood that because they give up, oh, everyone is like that. No, everyone is not like that. Look out for what works for you and what is best. So the first thing to do is to not blame yourself for what happened, that you are not the reason why, and that something can be done, that you're a better person. You can. So affirmations, you need to have some form of affirmations for yourself every day. You need to seek help. If you're not getting access to a clinical psychologist, at least I know there are pastors now that are training in psychology, and they can offer you such help. This community of support I'm talking about. Now there's social media. You have a lot of activists being open and accessible, where you can go to the social media handles. At least I know Bashira to Kamal Muslim does a number of and offers such support. And these people have people that they can connect you to. So look out, step out of your way, look out for these spaces, share your stories. Sometimes just by a social media post, there's somebody that can step in and help you offer the support. But seek help is the most important thing that one needs here.
Well, thank you for that tip as well. So looking at it holistically in rooting out these issues, how do you think our community leaders can come in, looking at how sometimes the cultural, perceptions about how these roles have gone really deep into the heads of us of people? Where do we start from? How do we get into this particular space and change the paradigm completely?
We start that first with our national responses. I believe that because if you say you start from home, these are individuals and their small spaces. But then if we have national practices, measures that deter gender-based violence, that we ensure that whoever commits such an offense is penalized for it, it will create a culture where everybody knows that they cannot do that. We have conversations and say, oh, when people travel outside of the country, they fit into the system there. When they come to Ghana, then they change. Then we say systems work. Let our systems work. And for me, it is the fastest way of achieving the results that we seek, that at the national levels, the laws, the institutional measures and structures that are in place are put in place in such a way that they are effective and functional. And then we can come down to the community level with sensitization, awareness creating, and we can use the statistics, advocacy, the results that we have achieved at the national level to shape the messaging at the community level. Okay, so when this person did this, he was arrested, he was jailed, he was dealt with this way. And then when you send such messages across, we need to change our cultural norms. And that's why I said re-socializing. And the key thing about resocializing is looking at the stereotypes we have about women and men. Oh, men are like that. Men are not like that. Not every man uses violence as a means of reinstating power. Not every man is abusive. And because of that, if there's evidence to show that men are not born like that. So let's change our messaging. That the only then there's this assumption that the only language women understand is abuse. No, not every woman wants to, or no woman wants to go through that. So these are the things we need: change norms, change practices, our messaging, and our socialization. That's key.
Right. So talking about the part of the men, what role can men play in, reducing femicide? If you're talking to a man you've met or anything of that sort.
I have come to notice that when men step in to lead advocacy around gender-based violence, their fellow men listen and listen better. What we need is men that are dedicated and ready to raise these issues and awareness around gender-based violence, the consequences and an effect of gender-based violence, even for them men themselves. So we need men as allies. We need men that are ready to step out there and sensitize and educate. We need, and the way we can do that is to be able to give them the information and then the statistics. So I'm hoping that there are some men that are listening that can help achieve this. Community allyship can also involve looking at men that are influential and like role models to other men. When they speak, they hear. So what we have to do is also address messaging around masculinities. Who is a man? Being a man is not a man being abusive or not being somebody that hits. So how to educate men and message, and then the messaging, and also getting them to lead some of these advocacy campaigns, especially email-dominated spaces. They tend to be very effective.
Right. So the men have a really active role to play in reducing femicide. Yeah. So, touching on the part of the relationship where a woman see the red flags, sometimes easier said than done, is it possible that you need to have a support group as well in helping you to get out of such relationships so that you don't end up, because sometimes your emotions can cloud whatever red flags we are seeing. Sometimes you see that you may learn all this, but you may be in a relationship, but you are seeing the signs and you are still thinking he would change or something would happen to change the situation. So what are some of the things a woman can do, effectively, more than just knowing it, but putting it to work in a practical situation?
So I'm building on that. So that's why I said women must learn separate emotions from societal messages. Sometimes emotionally, you are done, and that this relationship I want to out. Then you think, but what will my friends say? What will my family members say? So the pressure, societal pressures, is sometimes what keeps us, and not because we actually want to be there. And this is why I said it's important that we have this community of friends or people we can talk to. Sometimes these people are even telling you, leave, this is dangerous. And then you will tend to think, oh, let me give it a little bit of time. If it is not because of societal pressure, and then you think that you are emotionally invested, seeking help. I think as women, we must learn to seek help. And then if you don't want to talk to somebody, you can watch, there are various movies, documentaries, or on relationships, on how to escape, that you can turn to. So you can take your time to document your journey and where you want to. You need to, I'm not saying that it's going to be easy to work out immediately. There's this friend who said he knew a lady that was in a relationship. She was in an abusive relationship where she was beaten by her partner almost every day. They kept telling her she wasn't leaving. So I told him that one day, what will happen for her to leave will happen. I just hope that is not something that will come. What changed? One day, the guy was beating her, pushed her outside and closed the door, and somebody saw her, and that was it. So public shaming and naming are some of the reasons. But then I think that if you don't want people to know about what you're going through, There are various outlets. You can do internet search, how to leave an abusive relationship, how to identify red flags in an abusive relationship. And then it takes time. You, out of curiosity, you can ask people questions on what to do and how to go about it. But I hope that whoever is listening understands that talking about it this way does not mean it's easy, but we are saying that that's the safest space for you. And that leaving one relationship does not mean that's the end. Until you leave that relationship, you don't know what you have until we say that you don't know what you have until it's gone. But then you never know what you have also until you let something go. So we should be ready to be able to take the risk of letting go. It's better to be a loser and leave than to stay and be a loser in death.
Wow. So talking about technology, as you said, you can use internet to search out for solutions. Are there some limitations to that in terms of using technology to harness women's safety?
Yes. Misinformation. You can find wrong information. That would be one of them. I am looking at, if you're looking at Ghana, like access to internet for a lot of women can be a limitation. Language barrier can be a limitation. Understanding of how to maneuver the internet spaces. But then there are so many ways that you can overcome this as well. If you don't have a smartphone, if you don't have an access to an internet, you can resort to somebody and ask, oh, can you check this for me? I need to do this. There are children in the house, your children that are going to school. You can ask them to do some of these sessions. You can go to a community member. You can walk to an internet cafe and all that. So these are some of the ways that these can be maneuvered. But in the midst of all this, if they are not available, talk to people. People have experiences. People have seen others go through. People have offered support. You can go to your religious support structures. But one thing is also the fact, the tendency that you may be asked to stay. But for me, it's important that there's a certain change ever since this Nigerian artist Osinachi died. Pastors are now raising that awareness consciously, even on social media, asking their church members to step aside when they think they're in danger. So there's this change that is occurring. And I'm hoping that in the next year or two, pastors can boldly step in, even when they realize that things are going wrong, and take these people. We need as a country to also have shelters where some of these people can go to as first point of escape, so that they can get time to rethink and know what to do.
Wow. Thank you so much for those tips as well. So we have interesting comments from Chris. Chris says the session is very insightful. Florence says she's learning. So we thank you all for joining the session today. Thank you for sharing your comments. So just the last question before we allow you to go, Doug. So, and in the educational field, you are in the educational sector. What are some of the things that are being done in order to, reduce these issues?
So one good thing is that most of our campuses, especially the public universities in Ghana, have the anti-sexual harassment policies, and these cover other offenses as well, physical abuse and all that. And then we have gender centers, counseling centers, sexual harassment and gender-based violence committees. We have a number of our universities are having police stations and then hospitals. So these are all support spaces that students can go to if things go wrong. And then we have orientation activities where students are sensitized about gender-based violence, how to protect themselves and what steps to take. The universities are also periodically undertake research to identify the extent of gender-based violence practices and also what needs to be done. So there are a lot of measures that are being put in place on university campuses. The issue is whether these students listen, or when they listen, if they act on them. Because there's underreporting, just like in the social general society, underreporting of gender-based violence that occurs among students, but we do know that they happen. And so we're putting in different measures in various spaces. Some of the universities also do outreach to the senior high schools and other spaces to educate them on gender-based violence. Are people aware that GBV exists? Yes, but I think that the lack of political will, because they'll say, oh, when we go to report, what will they do about it? And these are some of the limitations. And I hope that we extend this to the basic schools, and to ensure that these things are addressed and we have some effective legislations as well.
All right, thank you so much, Doc, for sharing these insights with us. We learned a lot, and we encourage our participants to share this video, this link to their friends, to your fellow sister, brother, uncle, mother, so that they can learn a lot of things that they can do to, reduce this femicide and help women to be safe in wherever they find themselves. So thank you so much, Doc, for sharing these insights with us. It's always a pleasure to have you here. So before ending today's program, I want to introduce to you an amazing online resource that you may find helpful. This is the eLibrary USA. The eLibrary USA is the state-of-the-art digital library with 9 premium electronic databases that include digital newspapers, magazines, journals, videos, and dissertations. So usually this resource is only available to use in person at our American spaces, but with the global pandemic, we are opening up access to this resource. So if you are interested, sign up using the link that can be found in the comment section below. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, please do, so that whenever we have a live session, you can be notified and you can join in and benefit from this program. So this program was proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy Ghana, American Corner Aboba, in partnership with Mobile Web Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Doc. Till we come your way again, have a wonderful day.